All right. Welcome to the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast. And this is your host, Franco Sierra. And here we go. And welcome back to the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast. And this is your host, Franco Sierra, once again. All right. A few quick announcements before we kick off to the show. Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast, where I not only post pictures and clips and short videos, but it's like kind of act like my website. So any updates on what's going on on my podcast, just go over there. Where is it? Right here. Give it a like on your way in. And YouTube. My YouTube handle is youtube.com/@ the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast, where you can actually find me more easily. Reddit. Follow me on Reddit. Same concept as Instagram, though, but I only post like pictures. That's about it. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do that. Reddit right here. u/Foxtrot Sierra Pod. And TikTok. Same concept, trying to mix up with something new. But yeah, follow me over at the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast and like the video on your way in so I can level up on this bitch. All right. Okay, let's rewind back to previous episodes of what we talked about. First we talked about Stalingrad and Kursk. Or pretty much long story short, Germans tried to take Stalingrad. They initially failed and tried to make it up at Kursk the following months using their Wunderwaffe, which is their wonder weapons, which are these series of untested tanks in the battlefield that thought that would work in their favor, though, but these flaws kind of worked against them. And the delays only bought the Russians time to reinforce the positions. Also, thanks to like a little ace in the hole up in Bletchley Park. So, if you want to know details about it, go over there on episode 24, and I go exclusive details on it. So, though, but back to what we talked about. Actually, no, sorry. Let me correct myself. And all you've been waiting for. The Christmas Truce of 1914. All right. You probably heard about it. Christmas Truce was actually a series of ceasefires that took place along only the Western Front. It never took place at the Eastern Front, nor Africa, nor Asia, just exclusively at the Western Front at the end of December 1914. Although it was not an official truce, and in some areas of the fighting continued, it is thought to up to over 10,000 British and German soldiers took part. No French. Like the French never took any part in this because, well, if you're a Frenchman fighting World War I, these are guys like fighting in your homeland. Like, do you want to choose these guys? Oh, wrong one. No, because they're locked and loaded, ready to shoot into Germany. So, like, the British, on the other hand, they're just there to help the French out. And you'll hear troops sing carols, Christmas carols along the trenches, and met in no man's land to exchange gifts and souvenirs. Okay, so initially at the end of 1914, when the war kicked off, both sides of the Entente and the Triple Alliance thought that the war will be over by Christmas. Right? They were so on this lie, saying, you know what? You fight for glory, and by Christmas, you'll be at home with your family, blah, blah, fucking blah. Right? Of course, that was a load of because the war continued, and there was no end near sight. So that will be it. So like let's kick that because I know that during like previous episodes I've been talking like World War II stuff though, but since it's being Christmas, I'd like to talk about a little recap rewind on how the First World War actually kicked off. Though I'm not going to go into explicit details on it though, but like you can watch my episode 1 that I go to the exclusive details on the alliance treaties that kind of led up to the First World War. Like from the Treaty of London, the Dual Alliance Treaty, the Franco-Russian Military Convention, the Franco-Anglo Alliance, and the Anglo-Russian Convention, which all took place. Which it's kind of like a series of intertwining alliances, just tangled up, and it only takes like one incident to let it happen, and that, of course, is the assassination of the Austro-Hungarian's the Archduke. Correction, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which he is the successor to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was being held by his brother, Emperor Franz Joseph I. Okay, so the war kind of started off with we're just gonna talk about the Western Europe alone, because this is where like the Christmas Truce actually took place. The Germans' idea was go on my episode 2. I talked about the Schlieffen plan on how the Germans tried to knock the French out of the war in order to concentrate on the Russians after, because they banked on the idea that the Russians, since the Russians have a huge army, it's gonna take them a while to organize and mobilize all the forces. So they want to knock. The idea was to knock French out of the war, button hook around Paris, and just completely knock the French army out. They don't want to occupy them. They just want just blast them out. All right, because they seriously. Instead of button hooking around Paris, one of the armed groups was trying to let's say relieve the other armored group that was slowing down, which kind of worked against him. Again, go on episode 2, and of course, episode 2 Redux. I go at explicit details on the Schlieffen plan. But long story short, it failed right at the River Marne, and of course, the French call it the miracle at the Marne. So the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, and the French forces stopped the Germans right over there. I think it's Armored Group A and Armored Group B. Again, go back to episode 2. Like, go over there, like on your way in. Watch some OG stuff where I kind of like was kind of mic shy. So, but hang on. Okay, so thereafter, when the Schlieffen plan failed, it was a pretty much a quote unquote race to the sea, pretty much all the way up to the North Atlantic. It wasn't more like race to the sea; it was more like both sides trying to outflank each other. So the Germans will make a series of trenches, while the French and the British will attack and try to outflank the French and the British. Though, but again, same concept. They'll build a series of trenches, and of course, the British and the French will do the same thing, try to outflank the Germans. What do you think the Germans did? Build some trenches, rinse, wash, repeat, all the way up to Ypres. And I'm just gonna pop up Google Map first, Google Earth for a sec, just to give you like a general idea here, in case if you really don't know. All right, here we go. Whoop. The Earth's upside down. Or is not. Or maybe. I'm just kidding. Whoop. Hang on. Sorry, guys, first. Hang on. It's kind of hard working on a single screen. All right, here we go. All right, so here is somewhere up here is Ypres. All right, where is that city? Hang on. I'm about to type it in. All right, right here. So River Marlin, I'm not gonna type it again. So it's somewhere over here, right? And then they kind of like build a series of like trenches trying to outflank each other all the way up to the North Sea, right up to Ypres, and led up to the first battle of Ypres. And there you have it. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. Here we go. Here we go. I kind of want to show you a couple of videos. First one is if you go back to back 8 years, back in 2014, where this company called Sainsbury made an ad for the 100-year anniversary of the Christmas Truce of 1914. Yeah, let's just pop it out here. Chrome tab. There we go. Okay, I got the link down at my at the description below. So if you want to check it out. Oh, wow, this is compliments to the Sainsbury advertisement, Christmas 2014.
Jenkins, Oakley, 9. All is calm, all is bright. Das traute hochheilige Paar, holy infant, so seligen Haar, sleep in hellish peace.
All right, as you can see, it kind of led up to Actually, I'm just gonna shut the up and play the rest of the video.
Ein Blitzer kommt! Ein Blitzer kommt!
Jim?
Jim, no, don't do it!
Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet! Nein, Otto!
Jim.
My name is Jim.
Mein Name ist Otto.
Pleased to meet you, Otto.
Freut mich.
Rose, she's called.
Sie ist schön. Sie ist schön. Danke.
Happy Christmas.
Frohe Weihnachten.
Yeah, there you have it. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool commercial at first. Or it is a cool commercial. In fact, Sainsbury kind of course, they got some flack over it. There's some people that you know criticize them for romanticizing the war. Oh, but really, it's what happened. Like you have Germans and British in foreign soil. Shows the rationality that both sides really didn't want to be there. And this is like the lower rank side. And of course, as when this fraternization reached to different levels of higher command, oh, they weren't too happy with that. In fact, I really want to show you another video. We will talk about. Here it is. This is another video. Compliments to the Imperial War Museum. Again, you can check out the description below, and we will play another step-by-step breakdown on this video and go on details of it.
In 2016, IWM was contacted by the family of one of the soldiers shown in this photograph. We now know that this is Arno Bohm, a German soldier standing alongside British troops from the London Rifle Brigade. They're standing together in the middle of no man's land during the Christmas Truce of 1914. This photograph captures a moment so unusual in the First World War that many people at the time, and to this day, believed it to be a myth. In the midst of a brutal, total war, how did this momentary peace come about? What impact did it have in the course of the First World War? And why did it never happen again?
We were in the front line. We were about 300 yards from the Germans, and we had, I think, on Christmas Eve, we'd been singing carols and this, that, and the other, and the Germans had been doing the same, and we'd been shouting to each other, sometimes rude remarks, more often just joking remarks. Eventually, a German said, "Tomorrow, you no shoot, we no shoot."
At the start of the war, many believed it would all be over by Christmas. However, by December that year, it was obvious that this was not the case, and thousands of families and soldiers were facing a Christmas of separation, grief, and hardship.
So for those soldiers who were in the trenches over winter 1914, the conditions would have gotten gradually worse and worse. So you got a lot of rain, a lot of frost, and the general living conditions would have been terrible.
But the British troops were not alone. In the trenches opposite theirs, sometimes only 30 yards away across the strip of no man's land, were German soldiers in the exact same situation.
There was lots of opportunity for each side to communicate with the other. And this was a regular thing which happened right from the start of trench warfare.
Oh, sorry. I was muted this whole entire time. I am such a
Dumbass!
All right, you know what? Never mind.
But communication would often be in the form of soldiers from one side shouting over insults to those in the other trenches. But what was interesting at Christmas is that both sides actually started to communicate in more friendly terms. It really began with the Germans singing Christmas carols and setting up Christmas trees on top of their parapets. And so they came to very much empathise with one another.
I remember very well Christmas. I remember the Christmas day when the German and the French soldiers left their trenches, went to the barbed wire between them with champagne and cigarettes in their hands, and had feelings of fraternization and shouted they wanted to finish the war. And that lasted only 2 days, 1.5 really. And then strict order came that no fraternization was allowed, and we had to stay back in our trenches.
Yeah. So what that means is it kind of reached up to levels of like high command on both sides of of the armies. And so in fact, one of them actually both high commands were like, demanding like, like any like the junior officers and the high like the senior enlisted men to be, held accountable for, an example being court-martialed. So like they never got to the bottom of it, and no such thing ever took place.
The Christmas truce varied in different parts of the front line. Ceasefires were hastily arranged, sometimes to enable the collection and burial of bodies or to allow the trenches to be repaired. In other cases, the soldiers simply enjoyed fraternizing with the other side.
Okay, so what that means is, never mind.
And we shared fags, goodies with the Germans. And then
All right, fags means cigarettes, in case you guys don't know.
from somewhere, somehow, this football appeared.
Was it a proper football?
It was a proper football. But we didn't form a team. It wasn't a team game in any sense of the word. It was a kick of theirs. Everybody was having a go. It came from their side. It wasn't from our side where the ball came.
How many people were taking part, do you think?
Well, I should think there'd be at least a couple of hundred.
Did you kick the ball?
Oh, yes, I had a go at it. I was pretty good then, 19.
But while some parts of the front line were playing football and swapping stories, others were confused by what they heard or felt no inclination to socialize with those they had so recently been fighting.
The example, the French. Again, like, why would they fraternize anyone that's invading their home turf? In fact, they at a brief period of time, they even resented the British for even taking part. In fact, there were stories of some couple of French men and French women would like spit at marching British and Scottish troops for actually participating in it, because that's how bad it was. Though, but it kind of subsided through 1915, and more would explain.
After a few moments, there were lighted objects raised above the German parapet. The Germans were shouting over to our trench. There's no doubt about that at all. And before we could take any action or do anything, we were ordered to open rapid fire, you see, which we did. The Germans did not reply to our rapid fire. They simply carried on with their celebrations. And were...
Okay, so I got to correct myself. So not every trench decided to take part in the ceasefire. There were some cases of like little bits of gunfire or firefights.
Having a very fine time indeed. They certainly were not going to do it anymore. They thought that we were idiots, I suppose. We were. Well, not us, but the command, you see.
The way that trench warfare was organised in the First World War, each sector was very distinctive. And so you wouldn't necessarily know what was happening in the sector next door to you. And you do get stories of one area of the front where they're experiencing a truce, But then suddenly they get fired on by the troops in the next sector who don't realise what's happening.
For those soldiers not involved, the truce must have seemed unbelievable, and even more so for those back home. For months, the media and government propaganda had shaped a perception of German soldiers as bloodthirsty enemies, baby eaters, devils, ruthless killers.
Okay, what they mean by that? Because remember the Schlieffen plan I was telling you about? Okay, they remember that in order to go through northern France, they have to go through Belgium, in which they did. And the Germans at the time had no problem invading Belgium because at the time they see the Belgians as subhuman. So, long story short, the Germans at the time treated the Belgians like what the Japanese treated the Chinese over at Nanking. You know, the grape of Nanking, also known as, and of course, in this case, the grape of Belgium. And yeah, this is why the French took no participation in it, especially the Belgians.
But news of the remarkable Christmas truce soon spread abroad. By the end of December, letters and photos arrived home, and newspapers began to publish accounts of the truce.
My father was delighted to have a letter giving such a description of events, and he sent them up to the Daily Telegraph. I got into frightful rocket. That showed up that it must have been me who wrote it, and Mossy got hold of me, gave me an awful dressing down for daring to write to the press. But of course I didn't. My old man wrote to the press.
These photographs were taken on personal cameras that some soldiers had taken with them into the trenches. Photography in the trenches was discouraged for obvious reasons, but during the Christmas Truce of 1914, soldiers on both sides of the trenches could not resist the opportunity to document such a unique event.
At the beginning of January 1915, the newspapers suddenly start printing these letters. And to begin with, there was a certain amount of disbelief. But then over time, suddenly photographs started to appear as well. And by that time, the evidence was clear that this did happen. It wasn't a myth. And the media at the time absolutely loved it. There were lots of discussions in the newspapers about whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. And, in a way, it's a wonderful snapshot of Christmas 1914 when attitudes were still slightly naive because the war had only really just begun. You find that in 1915 and onwards, the war becomes almost a much more serious endeavour.
The Christmas Truce would come to be remembered as something of a blip in the regular conduct of the war. It conflicted with the patriotic aggression required by both sides.
Yeah, so in other words, after Christmas and New Year's and following on the beginning of 1915, the war actually got even bloodier and bloodier and even more bloodier. And again, as what the video has described the Christmas Truce was just another blip on the radar.
It also served to highlight the great contrast between war and religion. How can you fight a war of aggression while also celebrating Christmas, the traditional time for peace and goodwill?
Yeah, kind of the fucked up irony. So again, that's why no one really talked much about it. Again, it's kind of a controversial subject to this day, though. But at the Foxtrot Sierra Podcast, I really don't give a because we were going to talk about it anyway.
For those reasons, the Christmas Truce was increasingly seen as unimportant and awkward to fit into the standard narrative of the First World War.
You never get anything like the Christmas Truce happening again. And over time, not only is it seen as an anomaly, but almost as a myth. And it gets to the point where people are actually doubting whether it happened in the first place, which continues, right up to this day. So there's still a lot of confusion about whether there was a football match played and things like this.
We didn't cross to France until March of 1915. But although it would be arrogant to say that the thing didn't actually take place, I very much doubt whether anything of the nature or magnitude that has been claimed for it took place at all. Now, the purpose of that barbed wire in the trenches was to keep each side in its own place. Therefore, why would anybody try to break that? And if anybody tried, what were the NCOs doing? What were the officers doing? I think the whole thing borders on the fairy tale and may be classed with the Russians with snow on their boots and the Angels of Mons.
We know by looking at German newspapers that Christmas Truce was covered there in a very similar way to how it was in Britain. In the 1920s and the 1930s, you see definite examples of how the Christmas Truce changes in its depiction, because there was a much greater emphasis then on the German soldier as a hero fighting a noble war, whereas the Christmas Truce conflicts with that to a degree. So in Germany in particular, the Christmas Truce goes out of favour definitely in the 20s and 30s, whereas in Britain it continues to be a popular, celebrated story as part of the First World War.
The letters and photographs that reached home in Britain confirmed that this remarkable event had indeed taken place, but it was one that was not to be repeated.
The Christmas Truce was unique, and nothing like it happened again to that scale. And the reasons for this are varied. Immediately after the truce, the high command of both sides stepped in to make sure that fraternization and ceasefires like this would not happen in the same way. But also, in the long term, the real reason that truces like this didn't happen is that the war changed in the way in which it was being fought. As the war progressed, there's a more centralized method of command. Those in the front line would have been forced into constant aggression. You would have had artillery and trench mortar units constantly going. And also, of course, as the war progressed, it took a far nastier turn. So you get things like gas warfare introduced, an increasing number of civilian casualties. You also get incidents like the sinking of the Lusitania. The temptation, I suppose, to empathise with the enemy and the desire to fraternise with them changed dramatically from 1915 onwards.
It can be argued that the Christmas Truce made little difference to the course of the First World War, but it would be remembered as a crucial moment in history. The truce has featured in films, television programmes, inspired songs, and even featured in adverts. It's become part of the symbolism used when discussing the First World War, as synonymous with that conflict as poppies, mud, and war poets. This unique event has become legendary, in part because the idea of peace at Christmas in such an unlikely place is an irresistible story. But its enduring legacy is also due to these incredible photographs and the interviews from those who were there, documenting an event that to so many still seems wholly unbelievable.
Compliments to the Imperial War Museum. Thanks, guys. All right. Anyway, I'm going to read you a letter written by Rifleman C.H. Brazier, Queen's from the Queen's Westminsters excerpt from a letter written home published by the Hertfordshire Mercury on the 9th of January, 1915. Okay, and quotes. Now I'm going to kind of break it down somewhat. On Christmas Eve, the Germans entrenched opposite. Let me start that again. On Christmas Eve, the Germans entrenched opposite us began calling to us. Puddin', a happy Christmas, in English means good. So two of our fellows climbed over to the parapet and went towards the German trenches. Halfway, they met by four. Halfway, they were met by 4 Germans who said they would not shoot on Christmas Day if we did not. Oh, sorry, I kind of lost myself there. I'm going to keep going. They gave our fellows cigars and a bottle of wine, and were given cake and cigarettes. Okay, gifts for exchange. When they came back, I went out with some more of our fellows, and were met by 30 Germans who seemed to be very nice fellows. I got one of them to write his name and address on a postcard as a souvenir. All through the night, we sang Christmas carols to them and sang to us, and one played God Save the King at a mouth organ. On Christmas Day, we all got out of the trenches and walked about with the Germans, who we asked if they were fed up with the war. They said yes, rather. What does that mean? Both sides are pretty much fed up with the war because, again, like I told you, Germans and British on French soil, both sides, especially the enlisted men, are kind of questioning this war. It's like, why the are we even here? Like, if the war would have ended right there on Christmas, like that, imagine like what the world would look like. You think it would actually make a difference today if the First World War actually ended on Christmas 1914? You be the judge of that and let me know. Anyway, between the trenches, there were a lot of dead Germans whom we helped bury. In one place where the trenches are only 25 yards apart, and we can only see dead Germans half buried, their legs and gloved hands sticking out of the ground. The trenches in the position are called the death trap, as hundreds have been killed there. 100 yards or so in the rear, there were old houses that had been shelled. They were explored, and we found old bicycles, top hats, straw hats, umbrellas, etc. We dressed ourselves up in these and went over to the Germans. It seemed so comical to see our fellows walking about in top hats and with umbrellas up. We made the Germans laugh. No firing took place on Christmas night, and at 4 the next morning, we were relieved by regulars. Okay, so that was his letter, written for to his family. And again, as the video would described it, no other Christmas truces ever took place until pretty much like to the armistice, November 11, 1918. Because you have back in 1915, the 19th of January, you have German airstrips doing strategic bombings over at Yarmouth. And of course, 7th of May, you have sinkings of the Lusitania. And it gets even bloodier at the 10th of March at the Battle of New Chapelle, where 11,000 British and East Indian forces were killed. And towards the 22nd of April, the Second Battle of Ypres, and this is where gas warfare takes place. And again, it gets really, really bloodier. So, there you have it. That is the Christmas truce, everyone. Not really much to talk about it. So that concludes the episode, and I will be logging out for the rest of the year. So that's it. I'm done for the year. All right, I will see you at the new year 2023. Hopeful. Yeah, hang on. Hopefully, hang on. Sorry, guys. Hopefully 2023 will be better than 2022. Please. Oh, but anyway, thanks for joining in. And as always, love you guys. And don't forget to like the video on your way in so this could get out there on the algorithm. So, in the meantime, thanks a lot. Good night.